Every 4 computers now have primary control.
It's a gateway to another dimension, a direct line to demons, a slumber party game gone horribly wrong. You've seen the movies, you've heard the stories, but what if the true origin of the Ouija board has nothing to do with spirits and everything to do with businessmen cashing in on a national obsession? The real story is far stranger than any ghost story. To understand how this piece of cardboard became so feared, we need to go back to a time when America was obsessed with talking to the dead. Picture this, it's the mid-19th century. The American Civil War has left hundreds of thousands of families grieving. Amidst this overwhelming loss, a movement exploded, spiritualism. The idea that you could talk to the spirits of the dead wasn't a fringe belief for a nation in mourning, it was a genuine source of comfort. And people flocked to seances, desperate for one last connection. Mediums like the Fox sisters became celebrities, claiming to hear spirits rapping on walls. But these sessions were slow and expensive. People wanted a direct line to the other side, a do-it-yourself method for contacting spirits. And the market was ripe for an invention that could put the power of the seance into anyone's hands. The idea of using a tool to get messages from spirits wasn't new. But in 19th century America, homemade talking boards started popping up. And by 1886, newspapers reported on a new craze in spiritualist communities in Ohio, a board with letters and a pointer to spell out messages. It was a simple, genius solution, and that's when a fertilizer salesman named Charles Kennard read these reports and didn't just see a spiritual tool, he saw dollar signs. Well, Charles Kennard was an opportunist. He decided to mass-produce talking boards. In 1890, he and a group of investors in Baltimore, including a lawyer named Elijah Bond, formed the Kennard Novelty Company. Their goal wasn't to open the gates to the spirit world, it was to open America's wallets. But they needed a name. And the company legend is that they asked the board itself what it wanted to be called. Elijah Bond's sister-in-law, Helen Peters, a noted medium, placed her hands on the planchette. It spelled out Ouija. When they asked what it meant, it spelled back good luck. It was a brilliant marketing story, a product so mystical it named itself. The name Ouija was mysterious, memorable, and perfect for the brand. With a product and a brand, Elijah Bond went to the U.S. Patent Office, but the chief patent officer was skeptical and issued a challenge. He would only grant the patent if the board could spell out his own name, a name Bond and his medium supposedly couldn't know. And slowly the planchette started to move, and letter by letter it spelled out the patent officer's name. And the legend says the officer, visibly shaken, approved the patent on the spot. And on February 10, 1891, the Ouija board was officially patented as a toy or game. And whether it was spirits or clever research, it worked. The Ouija board was now a legitimate product. The Ouija board was an immediate success. The company eventually landed in the hands of an aggressive businessman named William Fuld. And Fuld was no spiritualist. He was a marketing genius who saw the board's real potential as mainstream entertainment. He marketed it as a wholesome parlor game for the whole family, even a romantic icebreaker for couples. And for decades, the Ouija board was seen as good, clean fun. And after Parker Brothers bought the rights in 1966, sales exploded. In 1967 alone, 2 million boards were sold, famously outselling Monopoly for that year. And for over 80 years, the Ouija board was just a harmless toy. And then in 1973, one movie dragged it into the darkness, The Exorcist. In the film, a young girl's horrifying demonic possession begins right after she plays with a Ouija board, thinking she's talking to a friendly spirit named Captain Howdy. The impact was massive. The film cemented the board's link to demonic forces in the public's mind, a connection that was never part of its original design. The wholesome family game was replaced by a sinister tool of the devil, a reputation that Hollywood has embraced ever since. So, are spirits really moving the planchette? Science has a simpler explanation: the idiometer effect. This is when your muscles make tiny unconscious movements based on your thoughts and expectations. When you touch the planchette, your brain anticipates answers and your muscles subconsciously guide the pointer to those letters without you ever realizing you're doing it. And it's no coincidence that when researchers blindfold participants, the board stops spelling coherent words. The spirit isn't a demon, it's a reflection of the non-conscious thoughts of everyone at the table. And if you enjoyed this bizarre history, hit that like button and subscribe. And I have to ask, have you ever used a Ouija board? Share your stories. We'd all love to hear them. And the journey of the Ouija board is a story about us. It started as a tool born from grief, then became a blockbuster parlor game, and was finally remade by Hollywood into a symbol of terror. The Ouija board is just cardboard and plastic. It has no power on its own. Its real mystery doesn't come from the spirit world, it comes from our own minds. A blank screen where we project our greatest hopes and deepest fears. Y'all have a good night, and thanks for listening. Every town has a local legend, but in Fairfax County, Virginia, the story of the Bunny Man refuses to die. It's a terrifying tale of a phantom in a rabbit suit with a hatchet, who supposedly haunts a lonely concrete bridge. For decades, most people wrote it off as a spooky tale for Halloween, but this isn't just a ghost story. It's a real-life account of how two bizarre incidents in 1970 snowballed into one of America's most famous urban legends. Now, the legend versus the truth. First, the legend, the most popular version, claims that in 1904, a transport bus from a local insane asylum crashed, allowing an inmate named Douglas J. Griffin to escape. Authorities then found a trail of mutilated rabbit carcasses before discovering teenagers murdered and left hanging from a remote railroad overpass on Halloween night. From then on, the ghost of the Bunny Man would kill anyone under the bridge at midnight. It's a horrifying tale, but it's almost entirely made up. Research by Fairfax County archivist Brian Conley confirmed there was never an asylum in Clifton, no court records for a Douglas Griffin, and no bus crash, well, because there weren't no buses. The entire 1904 origin story was fiction, likely sparked by a creative post on a paranormal website in 1999. And now the real story, two nights in 1970. The real story starts with two documented police reports from October 1970. Around midnight on October 18th, an Air Force cadet, Robert Bennett, and his fiancée were parked on a quiet road in Burke, Virginia. Suddenly, a man in a white suit with bunny ears appeared, screamed they were on private property, threw a hatchet, shattering their car's passenger window. And 10 days later, on October 29th, a security guard named Paul Phillips spotted a man in a gray, black, and white bunny costume on the porch of an unfinished house. The man was chopping at a porch post with a long-handled axe, yelling, "If you don't get out of here, I'm going to bust you in the head." By the time Phillips could react, the man in the bunny suit had vanished into the woods. Police investigated both incidents, but never identified the man. So, how did two strange but non-fatal attacks become a ghost story about a murderer? Those real incidents were weird enough to make the news, but it was word of mouth that turned the story into a legend. Local teenagers, already drawn to the creepy single-lane Colchester Road overpass, began spinning the tale. They moved the location of the attacks to the much spookier bridge, which soon became known as Bunny Man Bridge. The hatchet became his signature weapon, and his motive twisted from chasing trespassers to supernatural slaughter. The internet then took this local folktale global, cementing the fictional 1904 story as fact for a whole new generation. In the end, there was no asylum, no bus crash, and no ghostly killer. But something did happen. A real unidentified person put on a bunny costume and terrorized people with a hatchet for a few weeks in 1970. We still don't know who he was or why he did it. That unsolved mystery, the idea that a real person did these things and simply disappeared, that's far more unsettling than any ghost story. Y'all have a good night. Thanks for listening. Well, some paranormal legends feel ripped from a Hollywood script, and this is one of them. The story goes that in 1990, the crew of a commercial airliner witnessed something so reality-bending over the skies of Mexico that they vowed to never speak of it again. You won't find this incident in any official records, and the airline has never acknowledged it. Yet the tale has survived for decades, whispered in paranormal circles. It tells of an encounter that seems to defy the laws of physics, and this chilling piece of aviation folklore refuses to disappear. The legend begins at 3 a.m. on an Air Mexico ferry flight, a Boeing 727 heading to Mexico City with only the crew on board. It was a routine trip until a blindingly bright white light ignited outside the cockpit. Almost instantly, the aircraft systems went dead. The roar of the turbines vanished, plunging the plane into an eerie silence as the pilots wrestled with unresponsive controls. Panic set in. They were powerless, miles above the ocean. In a detailed comment to these stories, the crew's wristwatches along with the plane's clocks had all stopped. Trapped in a silent jet, the crew was hurtling towards an unknown fate. This is where a scary flight turns into a full-blown nightmare. A flight attendant named Bertha Teo supposedly went to check on the passenger cabin and saw a face looking in her window, a face she described as a classic gray alien. Terrified, she ran to get another crew member. When they returned, the tale gets wilder. They saw three thin-bodied creatures seemingly walking on the wing of the plane in mid-flight. In the cockpit, the captain and the first officer were paralyzed by an even more terrifying sight. Two of the beings were now peering directly in the front window, staring at them. For what felt like an hour, the crew was trapped in this bizarre standoff. Then, as suddenly as it began, the light vanished. The engines roared back to life and they regained control. After landing safely in Mexico City, the crew supposedly found a time discrepancy of several minutes between their clocks and the airport's. Shaken, they allegedly made a pact to never speak of what happened, fearing they would be fired. The story only surfaced years later after Bertha shared her account with Mexican UFO researcher Luis Ramirez Reyes. It's important to be clear. Officially, this incident does not exist. There is no aviation reports or maintenance logs to back it up. The entire story rests on this single, unverified testimony, making it pure aviation folklore. So what are we to make of a story like this? Was it a shared hallucination brought on by the terror of a power failure? Or is it a wild piece of folklore that points to something stranger? The crew of that flight has remained silent, leaving us with a story that feels like an episode of The Twilight Zone. What do you think? Is this just a great ghost story for the modern age? Or is there more to it? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for listening. Braley Pond, Virginia. For years, it was a quiet spot for fishing and picnics. But on a dark night in May of 2003, a brutal murder shattered that peace. The violence was so extreme that some believe it didn't just scar the community, it tore a hole in the veil between our world and the next, unleashing a terrifying paranormal fallout that haunts the area to this day. To understand the haunting, you first have to know the crime. On May 22, 2003, 19-year-old Christopher Kennedy was lured to the remote pond by fellow members of a local gang. Fearing he would inform on their activities, they stabbed him 13 times and left the body in the water. While the killers were eventually brought to justice, many believe the sheer violence of that night left a permanent supernatural stain on the land. Just 6 months after the murder, local paranormal investigators Shay Willis and Chris Pugh arrived. They had heard whispers of a shadowy figure and constant feeling of dread at the pond. During their investigation, the phenomena escalated dramatically. They witnessed a large green orb of light appear in a tree and then vanish, followed by the sound of a violent splash in the water, a chilling echo of the murder. As they rushed to the noise, Pugh was suddenly thrown by an invisible force. Willis then felt a terrifying non-human presence land on her back, something she could only describe as psychic jelly. They fled in absolute terror, convinced the murder had awakened something awful. That night cemented Braley Pond's haunted reputation, drawing countless thrill seekers. What do you think is really going on at the pond? Let me know in the comments and be sure to subscribe for more strange stories. In the 2 decades since, Braley Pond's dark reputation has only grown. Visitors continue to report disembodied sounds and that signature feeling of dread. Some paranormal experts believe it's a residual haunting, the traumatic energy of the murder replaying on a loop. Others suggest an intelligent haunting, possibly the spirit of Christopher Kennedy himself. But the local lore is even more complex. The region has a history of Bigfoot sightings and other strange phenomena, suggesting the murder may not have created the haunting, but simply acted as a catalyst for something ancient and dormant. Braley Pond remains a place of two faces, a beautiful park by day and a site of paranormal terror by night. Is the haunting an echo of a brutal crime, the lost spirit of its victims, or something far older? The story is a chilling reminder that some places, once touched by evil, are never quite the same. It leaves us wondering about the unsettling connection between real-world tragedy and a world we cannot see. Thank you guys for listening. Have a good night.